First and foremost, I want to welcome folks that are joining us live. Philip with MJ Luxe, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
The Partner Series is something we've been doing for a number of years now. The real basic premise of the Partner Series is that we would have conversations with customers who were experts in things like trade shows or special events or different things that they were doing, and we would talk with vendor partners, what we call partners. That's why we call it the Partner Series, like Philip. And we'd have these awesome presentations on the things that they could do for us and do for our customers. We'd get back and we'd sit down at the desk and we would be just inundated with inbound email, and we'd never have a good way to repackage what we were learning to our customers. And so that was the reason we started the Partner Series. And we do it once a month. And this month, we're talking about elevating your brand with premium clothing. And we have one of our primary partners for several premium clothing brands with us. One of the main ones is Peter Millar. Just putting some out there that folks would recognize. And on Philip, I'll let you talk about some of the other ones here in a second. But with that, thanks for being here. And I'm excited to talk with you and let people know what they can do kind of through us working with you all.
Likewise, Landon. Appreciate you having me on.
So then you're wearing an MJ Luxe vest, and I'm sure you're wearing some of your own gear. So tell me, what's the gear you're wearing?
I am. Actually, the vest and the polo I have on is a brand called Holderness Bourne.
There we go.
They're
Okay.
a high-end golf brand. You'd see them in, a lot of the high-end pro shops. Great
Awesome.
brand.
Yeah. All right. So one of the first ththings that we want to talk about is, I'm sure people come on here and okay, premium brands, Holderness Bourne, Peter Millar, Roan, Unreal, on and on and on. Why would I pay extra money for those kind of things? Why would I spend that much? And I think the problem that a lot of brands have is that, and look, we believe, just right up front, we believe that every piece of clothing that a business buys does not have to be a Peter Millar or some premium brand. It still comes down to the audience for the item, the objective for the item. So there is a place for all of the options that we have to offer. However, when you're wanting to give something to a center of influence of some kind, whether it is an employee or a customer, most of the time we find a lot of times those items are being given and they're getting left in a drawer. We say sometimes if the people that you're giving this to won't wear it off the clock, then it's not accomplishing a ton for you. What's your thoughts on that? We'll just start there. The idea that most branded clothing can kind of get left in the drawer, and we're trying to get people. We always say if they wear it when they don't have to, you're winning.
I totally agree, Landon. I mean, first of all, I think to speak to your first point, it's important to realize that as well, that there's not always a time and a place for a higher end acquisition like this. But, what we try to kind of frame the mindset on is not really a cost per piece mindset, but more of a cost per wear mindset. And if you're going to, get a cheaper polo, a cheaper t-shirt, something that doesn't wash well, something that won't, fit the same, the zipper's going to break afterwards, what is that gift really doing for your company past the first time you're wearing it? And if that's the use case, then that's the use case. But if you want this to be worn out to a kid's game, to a sporting event, on the golf course, to really show your brand over and over, then the quality is going to have to fit the product.
Yeah, no doubt. One of the things I want to ask you about is, kind of the idea of how you logo the items. Because to me, I think it's about the items, which you just described, and also how you logo them. One of the things we talk about is I always kind of describe it as concentric circles. So it's like whatever it is you're giving to people, the closer they are to being an employee of the company. In your case, you're wearing the logo right on the left chest. The idea is we want that logo as close to the center as possible with as much contrast as possible. But then as those concentric circles move away, so you move to maybe family members of your employees or your board or customers, that you tend to start to move the logo away and tone it down. Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that. And we see that a lot, and we see that a lot more so from the partners we work with that really take that extra step to care about those things, and you guys always do a really good job of that. But, I think planning it well, if you're wearing a vest, having this polo with the logo underneath the vest isn't going to do much for you. So,
Right.
Think about putting it on the sleeve, something that will show.
Yeah, so if
But
you're layering, right? Like,
exactly.
yeah.
And, getting a layering piece kind of gives more opportunity for that to be worn outside as well. But you're right. If you don't want it to look, if there is a logo here and you don't want it to look like a NASCAR, kind of vibe, then put it on the back yoke, put it on the sleeve, put it on the hem, put it on different areas to kind of match what you're trying to do with it.
Yeah, I had breakfast yesterday with a guy I meet with once a month, and he had brought me out to play Valhalla last year, and we were walking off the ninth green, and he was wearing a like just a kind of a pink polo. It was a Saturday, weather was beautiful, and it was I picked up on the fact that it was a Johnny O, and then I was kind of right next to him. I looked over and I noticed that it had a logo on the sleeve for what I think is a supplier of his. But it was tone on tone. Tone on tone means the thread for the logo matches the color of the item, so it blends in. And I remember thinking, man, see, this is someone who understood what they were doing, because if George is his name, if they'd given George this polo and they had their logo on the left chest, there's not a chance on any planet we currently occupy that he was wearing that on a Saturday at Valhalla. But the fact that they had put it on the sleeve, toned it down, he did. And then I saw, and I still to this day remember that company. And to me, that was just perfect execution.
100%. Well said.
Yeah. So the framework that we kind of talk about when it comes to like, okay, maybe we've been successful. Okay, awesome. I'm gonna consider some premium clothing, maybe where I haven't before, or press deeper into that. There's kind of 4 pillars we've talked about with, how do you go about making that investment? One, which we've kind of alluded to, we say is meet people where they already are. So choose clothing that they're already wearing in their daily lives. So if you pay attention to your customers or employees and you notice that they're already wearing Peter Millar in their personal life, when you see them, in the weekends, the soccer games, or you see them on the golf course, the golf course pro shops are a lot of times our friends in this case, because they tend to carry a lot of these brands that we've got. Just paying attention. 2 is align the retail brand with your brand identity. So I think this is a really important one. And Philip, I want you to talk to this, or speak to this. The idea of choosing brands that are sort of equivalent quality or equivalent in terms of how people perceive them to your brand. I think that's really important too.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, logo's important without a doubt. But like you said, a lot of the times it's going to be subtle. And to be honest, the clothing is usually noticed before the logo. And, your eye gets drawn to the piece, whether it's a vest, whether it's a quarter zip, whether it's a quilted jacket, and then your eye will get drawn to the logo. So having a brand that resonates with the wearer and the audience is very important. And, you just want to create a cohesive vibe with whatever the company or the recipient, the gift, whatever it's being used for, it just needs to make sense.
Yeah. I had last Friday, so what was it, 3 days ago or a couple days ago, I was meeting at a club downtown with one of our customers, and we did some Johnny O pullovers for him for Christmas last year. And we were just kind of talking about, we had I think we just recently did some JBL speakers that he just keeps on hand for, special guests or whatever. And I just asked him, I was like, how are those things that you gave out at the Christmas party last year? How are they working out? And he's like, oh man, he's like, on any given day. And I think we did, I don't know, somewhere between 30 and 50 of them. He's like, on any given day, I have close to probably 10 people wearing them every day. I see them in our executive offices. And so again, it just speaks to the fact that you give people quality things, they're going to use them. The 4th pillar we say is kind of investing in items that last, which we're alluding to here. I think this would be a good time to talk a little about, Philip, the brands that, you guys have got. If you go to MJ Luxe-enterprises.com and you click on the brand list, you can kind of get a sense of all the brands they have. It's quite a few. But I wanted you to have the opportunity to really talk about, because one of the things that we tell people all the time, these premium brands are awesome. They don't always lend themselves well to like the online shop environment, because every one of these brands kind of has their own rules with how you work with them. They approach pricing differently. Some of them we've talked, I won't mention the brand. We had one brand we had a bit of a challenge with early this year on inventory. Can you speak to that and kind of like the brands from your perspective that you have to offer, and just what people will want to keep in mind as they work with them?
Yes, definitely. So in our space, we tend to focus on what you would call a golf brand, the kind of things you'd see in a pro shop, a Peter Millar, a Johnny O, Holderness Bourne, a Grayson. Then we kind of stray into athleisure, things that can get dressed up, but also are casual and comfortable. Think like a UNRL growing brand out of Minnesota. Think, a Fabletics, a Roan, those kind of brands. And then we also focus on outdoor. So think Helly Hansen, think Stio, heavy jackets, but also lighter weight jackets, vests, items like that. So, it's all about, if you're going to be in a conference that's outdoors in summer, probably don't get an insulated jacket. If you're going to be in a winter, then we have those kind of pieces too. So it's all about just fitting the use case, but also fitting a brand that matches the the intended use from a vibe standpoint and a practicality standpoint.
I love how you frame that. Matter of fact, I definitely want to follow up with you after this. You kind of talked about the golf brands, and then you talked about athleisure and kind of outdoor. Did I get that right?
Yeah,
Kind of the
exactly.
buckets there.
Yeah.
And then also even thinking about it a little bit further, because it's funny. It made me think of there's a partner in our industry that's doing like kind of an industry retreat type event where they're a vendor. It's Rupt. You may know those guys over at Rupt. They're doing this event out in, like, I think it's Bend, Oregon, and it's like everybody in the industry is invited to come. They're going to do a session of meetings. They're going to do like different hikes and stuff. And to me, as I was listening to, I'm like, oh man, I'm like, yeah, like Stio, that kind of a brand is perfect. If you're going to give somebody like a high-end gift at an event like that, Stio's perfect. It's the Northwest. There's going to be a lot of outdoor events. That's an outdoor brand. Thinking about it that way makes a lot of sense.
Exactly. Yeah. One of the brands I mentioned, Unreal, they're out of Minnesota. And man, to begin with, it was a cult following in that region. And that was awesome to give them something that's in their backyard.
Yeah.
But honestly, it's also awesome now seeing the Southern California groups asking for it, the New York groups, and growing with that brand has also been an awesome thing to see. The same way that your company is benefiting from having your logo out there, the brands are too, and you're helping that endeavor.
Yeah.
And it's been a fun way to connect the two.
Yeah, I think it's just so interesting, the brand equity kind of trade-off that can happen to where, people feel great about, they love the Peter Millar brand, and then there's this weird thing that happens, like if I decide to take an item that comes to mind, probably one of their best-selling items, that Peter Millar Perth pullover, and the next thing you know, you give somebody something like that, and now they kind of are starting to associate, your two brands, and you're getting
Yeah.
some equity.
Yeah. Very well said.
I'm going to just hit a few of the brands here just verbally. And then we had on the LinkedIn Live, I asked my team to post the link to the PDF that you have for your brand partners. But I thought, we've got some time here. We're doing well. So I'm going to just kind of list these. And as I list these, I'm going to stop, Peter or Philip. Fuck, you're not Peter Millar, you're Philip.
No.
But be nice, right? If one of us would be. So Peter Millar is a big one. One cool thing about these guys with Peter Millar is that they do offer single piece minimum. There's another partner out there that offers, and there's others, but they tend to have some minimums of, I think, around 6 pieces. So that's a really nice thing. I do want to speak about, and Philip, you can comment on this. In general, these premium brands, and please correct me, we can get everything that you see on their retail site. However, that's not always true, and sometimes the inventory can be very, very dicey on the stuff that is purely retail for them. Many of them will create subsets. Go ahead, Philip.
Correct. There's always going to be seasonal product that is brought out seasonally and never stocked all that well to begin with and will be out of stock very soon. But yes, Landon, if you see an item on a retail website or in a department store or in a pro shop, we will have access to it. Whether or not there's inventory available is to be determined. But all these brands do a good job of keeping an assortment of what in the industry is called core that is restocked often. They try to stock well. Obviously, things can happen, but in the near future, there will be inventory again in that colorway, in that style.
Is it and I think this might be interesting to people listening. Part of the reason for that is that on the retail side, the way they tend to do, they design a line and then they more or less go out and book orders for that line, right? So they might pad that. I'm sure they pad it, but that's part of the reason on the retail side. That's kind of the general approach, right? And why sometimes inventory can be a little questionable.
Correct. They're working, 6 to 8 months out. They have to work with factories. They have to source the zipper from here, the threads from here, hems from here. So, they need to get commitments 6, 8 months out on what their partners want to see available. And what they get commitments to that far out and what the needs are in season, when those goods actually deliver. Sometimes they don't match up all the way. Sometimes there's a lot of stock in something they wish they didn't have that much stock in, but more often than not, there's a deficit in stock in something that would have done better had there been more of a, like you said, overbuy, a commitment out there and to have stock in season.
And conversely, in our industry, as folks who've bought clothing know, if you like a style and it's in stock and everything but medium and 2XL, that's a problem because your group that you're trying to give these to is not going to have those holes in the size needs. And so what they'll do with these core lines is they understand that, and they go, okay, we understand the inventory approach to the merch industry is different than what it is to the retail side. And so we're going to create a subset of our line where we keep inventory across a size scale. Now, one of the downsides to that is inevitably that can tend to be styles that aren't as exciting, I would say, as on the retail side. They can tend to be a little more designed for corporate, maybe less loud patterns, a little more solid colors, lending itself to logos and things like that. To me, this is a super important thing for people to understand because my experience is the retail brands, which I said I was going to mention, and I've mentioned Peter Millar, I'll get back to that in a second, but they get excited about our industry. Like, who wouldn't get excited about the opportunity to sell hundreds of something at one time? But there's a learning curve for them a lot of times in understanding that just because you've got clothing, this industry is a whole different animal in terms of being able to capitalize on those opportunities. And I'm going to say one other thing, and I think you got to know this if you're buying this. Some of these brands will maintain two different pools of inventory. They'll have a retail side and they'll have a corporate side. So we literally had this situation last fall, had a really nice order that I thought we were going to get for a Peter Millar item, out of stock on our side. Customer comes back to me. Hey, I can get them on the retail site. Why is that? Well, that's a challenge because then it makes us look incompetent. But the reality is, from an education standpoint, it's like, look, there's a huge place for these retail brands, but we want to make sure we educate you on some of the landmines that are out there that you might run into. And the reason that happened to us is because they maintain inventory on the retail side and they maintain inventory on the corporate side. They were out of that item on our side, but not on the retail side. So I'll stop and kind of let you speak to some of that, Philip.
Yeah, I mean, that's, kind of our day to day is managing those expectations with both our customers, but then also the brands. And as seasons go on, Landon, as we were kind of talking about earlier, these things happen 6 to 8 months out. So if you learn the hard way that there's not stock in an item, you can't just react and say, okay, it'll be there next week. It won't be there for 6 to 8 months, so.
Assuming they're carrying it forward, right?
Correct. So what we need to do is make sure that we're constantly telling the brands, the brands don't know what would have been good unless we tell them because they're not seeing the order come through because there's no inventory to order. So we have to constantly stay in their ear about what could have happened had they have stepped into a piece in a bigger way. And then they need to make the decision of, is that worth it to us?
Yep.
What we see a lot on the corporate end is a lot of quarter zips for men and women. On a retail level, quarter zips don't always do too well for women. They don't want to pull something over their head. They don't want to mess up their hair. They're more into full zips. But for a corporate, event, sure, you could put a woman in a full zip and a man in a quarter zip, but you want more of a cohesive companion vibe most of the time. So for us to kind of manage those intricacies with the brands and say, hey, like, we know on a retail level, this might not be the best moving item for you. But on a corporate level, not only do we need it, a program might not ever get off the ground if you don't have it.
Yeah.
And, then next season, normally there's 2 seasons for these brands, a fall and a spring season. So a January start and a June start. So if we, notice this inconsistency in June, then hopefully by January, the brands believe in the product enough to bring it around next time. And then, it gets better from there. But yeah, Landon, I mean, like you said, that first and foremost, these are retail brands. It's a blessing and a curse, and they need to look out for where most of their business comes from, and we need to, manage that expectations with both sides.
I think that really the summary of all that is that it's a good identification of where we as a team add value. And when I say team, I mean Goodson and our team, but also in partnership with Philip and his team. And that is managing everything we just talked about, which can be a little overwhelming probably to think through. But the bottom line is, I think the objective here is just to, for the partner series around this topic, we want you to know that these brands are available. We want you to know that we're here and ready to help you use them and help you explore and discover how they can be used for your brand to accomplish your goals. But more than anything, we want to also tell you that we're here to guide you through it. Our salespeople are called customer guides for a reason. Our industry is noisy and chaotic, and it can be a real challenge if you don't have somebody doing a good job of saying, hey, this is what you need to keep in mind. Now, I'm going to be honest, we don't always bat 1,000. in all honesty, Philip would have told me the brand we were working with late last year, we should have avoided it. Just not because the brand's awesome. It was just there were some things going on internally there with getting the inventory out, and there was a little bit of a long tail on our project. And so we should have pressed in and let them guide us a little bit more, and in turn been able to guide our customer a little bit better. But that project ended up turning out okay, and we came out better for it on the other end. But there is a lot to navigate, and that's why we got to work closely. So yeah, I'll stop and say anything you want to add to that.
I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head, and really, you know, we need someone like you on our end that can talk the talk with your clients. And I think you need someone on our end that can talk the talk with the brands, and having that dichotomy, that division, but also that partnership, I think is what makes these brands viable. Because, yes, we love it when someone says, "Can I get this exact polo in these exact sizes on this exact date?" Sure. But the reality is that's not how this goes. And, you guys have always been very good at navigating those intricacies and aligning yourself before you even come to us. And then that makes it easy for us to align with you and you to align with your client. So, as long
Absolutely.
as we always have that back and forth, and always have really the care, the desire to do that. That's why we love having you guys as a partner, and why selling the brands that are candidly complicated at times, it makes it worth it.
Yeah, no doubt. So I'm going to run through some brands here. So if you're out there and you're listening, I'm just going to do this kind of quickly, rock skipped across the pond. But what I'm trying to do, and again, I think I might have said this before. My team put the link out there, but Peter Millar, G4. G4 was one I wasn't real familiar with until I hit on you guys, and they got a really cool hat program. I'm going to speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, very cool. Actually, I have one here. It's relatively branded, but
Check it out. Yeah.
yeah, and they do all this work in-house. They have an incredible decoration team that can do all sorts of different stitching, and lead times can get up there as long as you kind of manage the lead
What was the
time.
minimum on that? Was it 50?
No, it's 24.
24.
As a rule, we try to keep minimums to 0. There will be specific programs like that will
Yeah.
dictate a minimum, but as long as you can navigate the minimum and the lead time, they do
Yeah.
incredible work. And they're also owned by the same company as Peter Millar.
Did not know that. That's good. Polo Ralph Lauren, RLX Polo, or excuse me, RLX Ralph Lauren, Unreal, which we mentioned, which actually Unreal is one that I think we need to do more with. I see people wearing it in their personal life more. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's definitely in my personal closet, the brand we represent that I have the most of, and just growing at an incredible pace.
UNRL. So when I say Unreal, like for folks out there that may not be familiar, you look it up, it's UNRL. Fabletics, so that was one. I mean, we've done really nothing with that. Holderness and Bourne, Grayson. Grayson is a very, very high-end golf brand. B. Draddy, which I'm actually wearing B. Draddy hoodie right now.
I could tell.
Fairway and Green, Toomey, Zero Restriction, which I love. They have a pullover. I think it's the Z700 that is like one of my favorites of all time. Stio, which we mentioned. Glider, Johnny O, which we love. Straight Down's got some really cool stuff. See, that's one we really haven't done much with. I got ahead of myself. I was looking at Helly Hansen workwear and just Helly Hansen in general. Southern Tide, Roan, Columbia, Cashwary. Am I saying that right?
Cashware.
Cashware?
Yeah, they're a little different brand for us, but more on the home side. Incredible blankets, throws, robes, towels, that kind of product.
So Collars and Co. I didn't realize. I'm learning that real time. I didn't know you guys had Collars and Co. Is that relatively new, or is that?
It is relatively new, and they're getting more and more into the industry. A good example of someone that we work closely with to explain the corporate market and make sure that we're aligning on all points. But yeah, great product, and especially for corporate.
That's the stiff collars on the polos and stuff, right? Like,
exactly. So if you're wearing a polo under a sports shirt from the outside looking in, you don't know if you're wearing a button down and polo or what, and it's extremely comfortable material.
Should have been part of our Derby collection. Now that I think about it, that would have been great because I think, Boast, never heard of that.
Boast is a legacy tennis brand who is making a big comeback, and we're working closely with now.
Next Belt seems self-explanatory, I think. Red Vanley. So Red Vanley I had never seen until we spent some time in Kennebunkport, Maine every summer, and in the little boutique men's shop up there, Red Vanley, they had a lot of their stuff.
Yeah, they're making a big name for themselves quickly.
Yeah. Turtleson, not familiar.
Yeah, very similar to Peter Millar in construction and quality.
Interesting. Varley. Matter of fact, I think we've had somebody ask us about Varley a little bit.
Yeah, one of the
Task.
few
Yeah,
women's
go ahead.
only brands that we carry.
Varley is a women's only brand.
For now, I think they have
Yeah.
a couple pieces, but that's their bread and butter.
Good to know. Holderness and Bourne is a men's only brand still. I'm pretty
Correct.
sure. Yeah. So that's another little thing you got to kind of think, if you're using, say, Holderness and Bourne as an example, you got to kind of think through how we're going to complement that, because they don't have ladies items, and we'll walk you through that. Task is one I've been aware of. They are also have a strong presence in those kind of higher end men's boutiques. They've grown a lot over the last few years.
They have, and they also have a lot of organic and natural materials, if that is ever of importance.
All right, I'm gonna try to pronounce it. Spongel. Help me out. Okay.
Very different, similar to Cashware. Fits a non-apparel need. High-end body wash products that you can kind of personalize.
Interesting. Okay. And then Cuts and Levelwear round it out.
Yeah, Cuts is a direct-to-consumer brand that's now making its way into corporate. A lot of cotton blend. What you'll find in a lot of our brands is that, being golf brands, they're very performance material centric. Cuts does a good job at combining the kind of classic cotton blend with some material fabrics.
Gotcha. And I'm a big fan of Levelwear. We actually did a pullover for our team. Levelwear's got some really cool decoration methods that are pretty unique too.
They do. They could do some good work on the placket and some pretty cool stuff.
Custom inside the hoods. So awesome. I think that just about lands the plane, Philip. First of all, I just want to kind of reiterate. I promise I didn't say this up front. We'll be out of here by 35 minutes. I'm right at 31 minutes for those watching. So we give a little bit of a buffer on the front end, but we try to stick to 30 minutes. So just a quick summary, elevating your brand with premium clothing, talking about trying to give people things that don't get left in the drawer, that 4 pillars, if you will, of trying to choose the brand right, meeting people where they are, aligning the retail brand with your brand, giving people something that's worth wearing, and investing in items that last. And then talking a little bit about which I really appreciate. I think one of the more valuable parts of the conversation, Philip, was just the things that people will want to keep in mind, the potential landmines, but we're here to help them through that. And with that, we kind of summarized a bunch of the brands. Hopefully people heard like, oh, okay, what you're looking for in a situation like this. Somebody's listening to this and then they just, oh man, I just bought a Red Banley item at, and I love it. And now I didn't even realize that I can get that for my company. I mean, that's what we're really looking for. So thanks again for being here. I appreciate your time.
Of course,
I'll let you kind of like anything you want to round out here.
No, I think you nailed it. I think if I could just leave with a couple things, I think it's important to just, you pay a lot less for a billboard in the middle of nowhere than you do for a billboard in Times Square. I think just kind of keep that mentality in mind, that if you want it to be seen over and over again, then you're going to need to provide a product that connotes that and makes that possible.
It's awesome. Okay. With that, thanks for those that have joined the Partner Series. Reminder, you can go to goodsonsupplyco.com. You click podcasts, and underneath that is this podcast, the Partner Series, and my other one, the Brand Herald, which explores just branding and building brands and the things that work and the things that don't. So we'd love for you to check that out too. Yeah, Philip, thanks again, and I hope that from this call we just start sending you a ton of business.
I would love that, but either way, that was a lot of fun. So thanks, Landon.
Yeah, thank you very much.